Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Monday, June 14th, 2021. Happy Flag Day. Today we're going to be talking about President Trump's baseless claims that he will be reinstated as President of the United States in the month of August, telling people closest to him that he believes he will be able to return to the Oval Office as president. Something that seems to be so far off the edge, so unhinged for the former president to say, with nothing backing up such a claim. Now, when I first saw this article, I found it 2 weeks late. I found it today, and I thought that it was satire. I thought it was satirical. I didn't think that this was serious. I thought this was some type of joke sent out through the news media just as some type of gotcha video or gotcha article, whatever it might be, or maybe it was just some type of scam link out there. But when I actually read it and I found that this was from Business Insider amongst other networks such as the New York Times and other reputable news sources, it ended up being such an unfortunate thing for me to read, something that made me feel very upset personally about the outcome of the 2020 election in response, or Donald Trump's response to such an election, and what this means for the direction of our country. So looking at this article was written on June 1st, 2021, or published on that day. And it says here that President Trump is telling members closest to him that he is going to be reinstated, encouraging such conspiracy theories that sprung back in January of 2021 when President Biden was first inaugurated. There was some discussion as to whether or not President Trump could move back into the Oval Office. We all knew, if you watched my channel, you knew that obviously wasn't going to happen, but President Trump and his colleagues sort of pushed this agenda, pushed this narrative across various forms of social media, and it's something that sticks with the Republican Party even today. And rather than try to squash any type of rumor or make this seem as if it's so far-fetched, President Trump is feeding into it. And as more and more of these news stories get released, it seems very evident that President Trump uses this as a way to stay relevant in the national news media, and that he is continuing these conspiracy theories as a way to retain his electorate. Now, The Hill reports that 3 in 10 Republicans, I'm going to turn the volume down before it accidentally ends up screaming at you guys, but they report that 3 in 10 Republicans believe President Trump will be reinstated as president of the United States. 3 in 10 Republicans. The Politico Morning Consult poll showed that this many, 30% of Republicans, believe that sometime in the future, in 2021, they will remove President Biden and replace him with President Trump. How fascinating. Such a wild conspiracy theory that seems to be gaining significant traction amongst the Republican Party, amongst the Trump wing. And the fact that 3 in 10 of one of the largest political parties in this country believes such a far-fetched idea, far-fetched claim is quite appalling. Because this is rooted in conspiracy theory, this is rooted in baseless claims, this is rooted in President Trump's claims that the 2020 election was rigged, things that had no substance, no proof behind them, and yet people are going so far and believing so far into this conspiracy theory that they truly believe President Trump is going to be back. Now, this is nothing that I would say is randomly put out there. This is not some spontaneous, sudden shift in the GOP's position on President Trump that 3 in 10 Republicans believe, such a preposterous claim. No, this has certainly been around for quite some time now, ever since the ending of the 2020 election. When President Trump tweeted out immediately on election night that states were being rigged, his supporters stuck with it. You know, when Hillary Clinton told us back in 2016 that this is exactly what President Trump would do, no one on the right wing acknowledged that as a reality. None of those Republican surrogates that went on to CNN, MSNBC, Fox News even encouraged such behavior. Because it was so far off the edge that this would be a reality in which someone would be saying the election itself was a big lie. The election itself was rigged. And then in the 2020 election, people were possibly more confident that President Trump wouldn't make such claims as president of the United States. But obviously, we now know that this was the exact result of President Trump losing, that he perpetuated these claims of election fraud, saying that Arizona was stolen from him, saying Georgia was stolen from him. I've seen comments on my YouTube videos about people expressing their anger with me, saying that it is a partisan thing to say that the 2020 election wasn't rigged. Well, I'm telling you now, this election wasn't rigged. These are the results of the 2020 election. It doesn't matter if you believe President Trump or not. Joe Biden is the president of the United States. He fairly won Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Arizona, because that's factual. There isn't some type of inherent bias or biased tone in that statement. It's true. Plainly put, Joe Biden fairly won 81,284,666 votes in the 2020 election. Donald Trump fairly won 74,224,319 votes. Joe Biden did very well, winning Arizona and Georgia. It did seem surprising that Arizona and Georgia went blue before North Carolina and Florida. It was interesting to me, but did I say that this was some type of evidence the election was rigged? No. Did Republicans come out and say before President Trump, this is evidence the election was rigged? Not that many Republicans in the United States Senate continued these claims of election fraud. They just didn't speak on it, which in a sense does fuel the discussion. But many of these Republican senators and many Republican representatives did not feed into it because they knew in their hearts and their conscience was telling them to speak out against it that this election was not rigged. And the fact President Trump is not only saying the election is rigged, and I'm sure you all know my opinion on that, because this was a very high turnout election. I was extremely pleased with the amount of people that voted because it's great for American democracy. The most American thing you can do is vote. And when you have way more voters than any election, the highest turnout since the year 1900, you're talking about 120 years past until the turnout is matched in 2020. For President Trump to not only claim the election was rigged, that's one thing. You know, he has been doing that for quite some time. But to go into his circles, to allow the news media to leak this or to release this as a leak from his inner circle. Anytime something is leaked in politics, 9 times out of 10, it's intentional. It's a way to test the waters amongst the American public. So President Trump, I'm sure, is very happy with the fact that the media is covering this, very happy that people like myself are making content about it. But it is something that is dangerous to American democracy. Saying the election was rigged and then going so far as to fueling this conspiracy theory that somehow in the United States Constitution there's a caveat that if the election is rigged, you can be reinstated in office. First of all, even if the election was rigged, there's nothing President Trump could do. You've seen it fail in the court system 50 times. The Supreme Court said, I'm not touching it. So many things happened against President Trump. Republicans in the state legislatures have said, I'm not touching it. Republicans in the House failed at blocking it. No matter what they tried to do, President Trump couldn't block the free and fair election of the 2020 election. And now, instead of fighting it, he seems to be just encouraging the fact that he is going to be reinstated as president of the United States. The goalpost seems to be moving and moving and moving. I remember that this was a claim that was first made about President Trump coming in March. Didn't happen. Then April. Didn't happen. Then June. Didn't happen. And now August. And President Trump telling people he thinks he might do it. He doesn't lose any credibility by saying he thinks because it's not entirely on him at that point. But for someone who with such a notable name, with such influence within the Republican Party, to be making such or encouraging such claims is appalling. It's not some type of partisan thing. You can't tell your supporters this because this is what happens. 30% of Republicans say, I think President Trump will be reinstated. That is so dangerous for our democracy. This isn't just a one-time poll either. We can actually see here, there's an Ipsos poll that was released in May of 2021, which just shows just how many Republicans believe the election was rigged. 56% of Republicans believe the election was rigged or the result of illegal voting. The majority of the GOP. In addition, the majority of the GOP believe President Trump is the actual president, not Joe Biden. Only 30% of Republicans feel that absentee or mail-in ballots were accurately counted. The confidence in mail-in and absentee ballots in 2016 was in the 80s for the GOP. The elections prior, in the 80s. The only thing that changed was President Trump's rhetoric on the counting of absentee ballots. How interesting. How unfortunate for American democracy. Looking at some of these questions, it was honestly so unnerving for me to read and see the data actually released. Because when you look at the amount of Republicans that strongly agree the election was stolen, 39%. Only 28% say they disagree. Some people don't know. The majority agree. And many of them want President Trump to run for president again. 49% of Republicans say they disagree with the statement that President Trump should not run. So many things have been warped by President Trump's rhetoric, been warped by the GOP on the 2020 election. And we all know exactly what happens as a result. Things like this happen because of 30% of Republicans believing Trump will be reinstated. What happens in August when President Trump isn't reinstated? Because it's not going to happen. There is no possibility President Trump will ever be president of the United States until 2025. And even then, it's a far-fetched shot that he would even win in 2024. But what happens in August when this doesn't happen? Two things could happen. Either they move the goalpost and President Trump says, I'll be in next year. Or people riot. People on the right wing, this 30% of the Republican Party that believes Trump will be reinstated, they riot. They get angry. They go to the Capitol. They go to their state houses. They go anywhere and say that President Trump needs to come back. I don't think I have to remind you how horrifying such a day was. The day after the Georgia runoff elections, and somehow the Democratic Party reaching a trifecta in the government for the first time since the election of 2008 was the second most important thing of the day. When you have people like myself who live on the outskirts of Washington, D.C., with parents, friends whose parents work in the Capitol, who are cowering and afraid for their lives. What happened here was not some type of sudden reaction. It was a large result of President Trump pushing these claims of election fraud, saying the election was rigged, to go up in arms to storm the United States Capitol, in so many words. And for him to continue such preposterous claims is unethical. There is no way you could even try to say that I need to be fair about this, because I am being fair. There are plenty of things I wish I could say, but I know that it wouldn't be right for me to say them, because I'm speaking from a point of anger and of being upset with the former president. And I'm trying to keep a level head when I cover stories like this. But this is just plainly wrong. There is no two sides to this argument. You can't claim the election was rigged and go so far as to tell your supporters, I'm going to be back. Or to tell the people closest to you, I think I'll be back. President Trump is either lying to himself or he's lying to everyone around him. Possibly both. But I really think it's the latter. I really think President Trump is in this position and lying to everyone around him because he knows that if he continues this, these people will stick with him through 2024. If they truly believe he needs to be in office, they will wait. If he gives up now, the same way Romney did, McCain did, Kerry did, Gore did, when they conceded the election, and Al Gore took a really long time, yet President Trump still hasn't done it. When they conceded the election, when they did, it was a time in order for both parties to get together and try to move forward and move beyond what is normally a very, very insane type of election season. 2020 was like no other. The result was like no other either. It was a very weird result. It was something that, we could have predicted, but also couldn't have predicted. We could have predicted Democrats would have had a trifecta, but for them to suffer major losses on every other level was quite fascinating. But the 2020 election, I think, is something that is all said and done. But for President Trump to continue these claims is just honestly so upsetting. Because I know that he does want to retain that support. He wants to do everything he can to remain relevant on the political scale. But there's a reason why he's banned from almost all social media platforms. There's a reason why these networks are saying he can't push these claims again. Because we've already seen the result. We've already seen what has happened at the United States Capitol. The first attack on our nation at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. in 200 and some years. This was scary. This was horrible for our American history. And the world was laughing at us. I know that for sure. We do know that. And that's what happened. That's what's happening when you have these claims. So the next time President Trump continues these claims, I probably won't be as easy on him. And I haven't been easy on him at all. And I know he's not afraid of what I have to say about it. But I can tell you now, this was what lost Republicans the Senate in Georgia. This rhetoric is what will lose Republicans in key races in 2022. The more you see articles, the more the media covers President Trump saying he will be back in office, the more deranged the Republican Party is going to be viewed. And we know the Republican Party, the majority of them don't believe in this. But it's that 30% that will spoil the rest. It's that 30% continuously, backing President Trump and President Trump's claims, reinforcing the cycle that will make the Republican Party look very bad. This is something that can't be viewed as a positive from an average independent voter. You are going to look at it and say, if the party backs this, I may be less inclined to back the party. The Republican Party doesn't, as a whole, believe President Trump will be reinstated. I don't want you to get that from this video. But 30% of the second largest political party in this country is something worth noting. It may just be one poll until it isn't. Until every single time you see a poll where they ask Republicans, do you believe the election was rigged? Who do you believe the legitimate president is? Who do you think will be reinstated? Will he be reinstated? And you start to see the same exact results time and time and time again. Sooner or later, it's not just one poll. It's 10, it's 20, and that's what we've reached so far. Since the 2020 election, the same amount of Republicans have said, I believe the election is rigged. That's why this is dangerous. Because we already saw what happened in January, yet this has continued through June of 2021. And the more and more and more that President Trump speaks on it and says, I will be reinstated, the election is rigged, you need to do everything you can to prevent this in the future, that's when you will start to see these numbers not fizzle out for potentially the next 4 years or maybe well beyond then. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch and then a playlist for my 2022 midterm election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.